On this episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast, we continue our 5-episode mission to explore the best of classic Trek, as voted on by the listeners, with episode 124, Space Seed, right after these sponsors reign in hell rather than serve in heaven.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast, the podcast where you get to listen in on the continuing Star Trek conversation that two lifelong friends have been having since they were 5 years old. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I am David C. Robertson.
Hey, buddy. How are you, man?
Oh, I'm here, been trucking along, I guess.
Yeah, me too.
How are you doing?
Me too. Yeah, it's been a hard week. Been a hard week for lots of reasons, and just trying to keep everything going. And Alyssa living in Dallas now, so she had all that crazy storm weather hit her, and I waited till the storm was over, or so I thought, to head over there and see her, and try to help out because she had her apartment was flooding and stuff. And but then on my way over there, it turned out that I guess I didn't wait long enough because the drive took 23 hours because there was so much ice on the roads. There was so many accidents that I ended up being stuck on the interstate for just hours at a time without moving. And
that sucks.
It turned a 9-hour drive into a 23-hour drive. It was crazy. I was awake the whole time and I did not like it. I wish I could have done what the crew of the Botany Bay did here.
All you were doing was, chasing some Maquis into the Badlands, and you wound up in the Delta Quadrant.
Yep. It should have been a short trip home. Took 80 light years, man.
3-hour tour, man. All goes back to Gilligan's Island.
3-hour tour. Okay.
All right.
Let's talk about Star Trek, man.
Yeah, so we are talking about Space Seed today, but I do really want to jump on some news that happened.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
First of all, Star Trek Section 31. They did confirm Julia McNamara, the Paramount Plus programming chief, and Alex Kurtzman were talking to Variety, and they said that the show is not greenlit yet. They said, we're very careful about curating the pacing, the number of shows given at any time, and what those shows are, so that we can make sure that it's always exciting when there's a new Trek show coming out. Maybe they said Trek and they just wrote this wrong.
Yeah, it sounds like they probably, hopefully,
I hope so.
The people in charge aren't calling it Trek. One of my favorite things that we do here at Paramount is that Star Trek.
So one of the interesting things she said was she was talking about one of the current series possibly, quote unquote, aging out naturally as, quote, perhaps an older lead is only committed to a certain number of seasons, and therefore we may move on from that. Feels like she's talking about Patrick Stewart.
No, man, it's proof, man. Discovery's over. Over. See?
But no, Patrick Stewart's been saying since the beginning that they had planned for 3 seasons of Picard. Yeah. And it makes sense to not want to oversaturate the market. That's what happened kind of before. So,
what do you mean the oversaturating of the market? Like with
Star Trek, just
Star Trek but I think they're still going to do that. They're definitely going to have more shows on than they have ever before. Although a lot of these shows are only 13 episodes instead of 22 or 26, right, which is a very different thing. It seems like a lot of these big properties, most notably Marvel and Star Wars, are starting to get their kind of ducks in a row, and Star Trek, really. And it looks like they're trying to do a thing where they are trying to get on this pace of having a drip of content constantly. Instead of hey, here's 6 shows to watch. It's
right,
hey, you're a Star Trek fan. Here's a piece of content once a week, And I like that a lot. I really enjoyed what Marvel's doing. I'm excited to see how Star Wars goes, even though I'm not the biggest Star Wars guy. I still think I like a good connected universe,
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think they really want more than 5 on at a time. They really want, 4 on, or they really want 1 on per quarter.
Right. So if they have about 4 series, about 13 episodes a year, that spaces out to about one episode a week. Although, like with Marvel, what they're doing right now, they're doing like WandaVision's 9 episodes, but then a lot of the other things are 6 episodes, and I love that idea. I love the idea of like you have an idea for a concept for your show, and you have a limited story to tell, and you don't have to fill any particular quota. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same thing with the episode lengths that they've been doing with Marvel. They like sometimes it's 27 minutes and sometimes it's 40. Like it just it's all over the place, and I love that because it's the creators get to decide this particular episode needs more time, this one doesn't, and I think that could be powerful for Star Trek to do. But it does seem like so far with the series they've been trying to stick to the 45-minute to an hour format.
Yeah. It does feel that way, well, except for Lower Decks, but yeah.
Well, yeah, Lower Decks being a very different thing.
And I'm sure Prodigy's going to be 30 minutes.
Prodigy is which one? Sorry.
Oh, Prodigy is the CG. It's going to be on Paramount Plus first, and then it's going to go to Nickelodeon. And it's the Hagman brothers, the guys that do the Tales of Arcadia show. Like they work on those, or they have worked on those. Tales of Arcadia came from Martin Guggenheim, and Guillermo del Toro, and the Hagman brothers worked on those shows. And it's we're talking about Troll Hunters, Three Below, and Wizards, and those 3 shows are very interconnected, and they're very they're great for kids, I guess. But I mean, Bethany liked them. They're like they did you see the artwork they put out for this thing?
I don't think I know anything about this show.
Oh my god. Like this is the show that Janeway's going to be on.
Okay. I remember us discussing the Janeway possibilities, but I don't think have we talked about the fact that it's animated?
Absolutely.
On the show, on our show?
This was the show that they developed for Nickelodeon.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to send you this picture.
I do like the idea that they're going to be able to like explore parts of. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's about a bunch of like non-human kids, or aliens, or whatever, who take command of a derelict Starfleet ship.
Huh.
And Captain Janeway is involved in some way. Kate Mulgrew is coming back.
Neat. It'll be neat to see what they do with Kate Mulgrew and and Janeway and telling that little bit of the story. You know, whatever bit of the story they tell, whether it's during the series of Voyager, before the series of Voyager, after. Yeah, I don't know what the time period is here.
I am going to guess, and this was me and Jason Smith were talking, and our guess is this is going to be sometime in the far-flung future, and they're going to find a ship that's got like a hologram of Janeway on it. Like they're going to get lost, and they're going to find like a hologram in there that could help them with this sort of thing.
Huh.
But I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, just looking at their outfits and stuff, they definitely seem to fit more with the vibe of the current Discovery timeline.
Mm-hmm. But then again, there was always such a huge part of the Star Trek universe that was unexplored. Because like you look at like Harry Mudd, for instance, or you go to Star Trek 3 and you find like those grifters who found the black market Genesis project data that they gave to Krug, and got their ship blown up. There's some real Firefly shit going on in the Star Trek universe.
Right. Yeah. Like the non-Starfleet folks are always a little more, smugglers and villainy.
Yeah.
A little more Star Warsy, out there in the rough and tumble.
Yeah, I said this on Twitter. I think if the Hagman brothers, if that's any indication of if what they're doing on Troll Hunters and Three Below, if that's any indication of what they're going to do here, as Star Trek fans, we have something really special to look forward to. I think it's going to be really good.
That's cool. I'm down. I got to tell you this story. We did a Bingers Assemble yesterday on the 2014 Godzilla.
Okay.
And Nathaniel Muzzy was on the show, and we're talking, and I kept kind of bringing up the fact that they treat the monsters very poorly. Mm-hmm. I was like, that monster was just doing what it was like, it like naturally does, and they're like trying to kill it. You know what I mean? And I was like, as a Star Trek fan, I kind of took exception. Like, as you know, I believe in the aesthetic of like trying to communicate, trying to make peace. And there's these humongous ancient life forms that like arise from the sea, and like it's really strange. The 2014's Godzilla. I make all this points on Bingers Assemble. Please go check it out. But
they're not going to need to, because you're going to say it here.
Right. I'm saying a small bit, but a morsel. This is a amuse bouche, so you'll go listen to Bingers later.
Good Lord.
I think I used the word amuse bouche on the episode. There you go, another little trailer.
And you've officially broken me.
I know. Anyway, I was saying that to Nathaniel Muzzy, and Nathaniel Muzzy said a very noteworthy thing. He said, "Here's the thing, Matt. I know you're a big Star Trek fan, but I think that Star Trek and monster movies are two of the furthest things from each other."
I disagree.
I'm sure I knew you would. But like,
well, the whole point of Godzilla was that we created Godzilla with our own, you know.
Well, that's the point of the old Godzilla. That's not the point of this Godzilla.
Is it not?
No,
I thought it was.
That is not.
I thought it was.
No.
I saw that movie.
Then you did not pay attention.
What caused it?
There is no cause. They are ancient, and they've been here as long as the Earth has, or whatever. Like, they don't say that. They say that they're like ancient. They're ancient and dormant. And in the original Godzilla, the nuclear experiments are what caused them. In this, they say that the nuclear experiments were our attempts to kill them.
Oh, okay.
So they weren't actually experiments. They were our attempts to kill the monsters.
Well, that defangs it a bit.
It definitely defangs it from the moral point of the original Godzilla. It's completely different moral idea. It's a really good movie in some aspects, but like well done. The guy, Gareth Edwards, who directed it, did a really great job. But it really it struggles to find a point, because it removes the original one and doesn't really fill the gap with like a new point. It becomes basically just a survival movie, but then they do weird things, like the two big bad monsters that you see in the movie. They have a moment where they meet up with each other, and they like nuzzle noses, and it's really sweet. And then the humans just go about trying to kill them, and it's like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You know, I don't remember a lot of it. Like, after Cranston dies in the first like 5 minutes, I just don't give a crap. And
everyone told me that first 5 minutes. He is alive for a third of the movie.
Is he?
Yes. He does get like, he's in the first scene. There's that first scene and that's what everyone told me. I'd heard this from a lot of people. Dude, Bryan Cranston's barely in that movie. Like, yes, he does die in the movie, but it's like a good way through the movie. Like
I don't know about that.
He's in that first scene, and then he's in like a whole bunch of other scenes with his son, like 20 years later. And anyway, he's in it more than I was led to believe for years.
Yeah, I just, lots of long, lonesome train rides and lots of slow burn.
Wait, in that movie?
Yes.
There is no long, lonesome train rides in that movie.
What?
24? No, man.
Where Aaron Taylor Johnson, they're like all suited up with their guns and shit, and they're like on the train, or whatever it was. Yeah,
there's an incredibly tense, incredibly well done, well shot monster scene on two of them on a train where if you're paying attention, there's all kinds of like subtle hints that the monster's coming, and there's these tense, crazy things, and you see the monster in the background with like a flash of lightning. It's great. It's well shot. It's beautiful. It's tense. It's not
really
long,
boring.
lonesome. No, it's not boring at all. That is on Bingers, we have the high shelf and low shelf moments, and those were my high shelf moments. There's like 3 of those in the movie where they have these like really intense scenes.
Oh, low, man.
Where they do a really good job.
As you once told me, I think you're on the wrong side of history.
As I once told you.
Yeah, you're often wrong.
All right, let's talk about Space Seed, which is why we're here today.
One more thing, real quick.
Oh yeah,
I wanted to get to. We've already kind of reported on this. Actually, we were named as the exclusive reporter of this.
Yeah,
sort of about Q here. But Jonathan Frakes threw out a thing without any context. It was just a picture of him smiling with LeVar Burton and Q. And friggin' John Delancey.
Okay, as John Delancey, not dressed as Q.
Right. No one's dressed as anything. They're all naked. No, they're all. They
sent this lover's nest picture between the three of
them. They're all wearing black, but it's very clearly like a high end photo. But yeah, I mean, like, what else are we supposed to ascertain from that? We know they're shooting Picard right now.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with it. If I really wanted to be an apologist and like say that there's nothing to see here, you could say that like they all go to conventions together all the time and stuff. So there's a possibility.
Not right now. It's pandemic time.
That's fair. But I could see them doing like a private meetup with some like high dollar fans or something. That's totally.
Oh no, man.
Totally conceivable. But that's me headcanoning the fact that that's me headcanoning real life. So I'll stop it. It sounds like Q is going to be in Picard. And
Geordi.
Yeah. Yes. That's okay. So like, yeah, we should make a report here. So all you people out there on the internet can quote us again. This is really strong evidence that we're going to have not only John Delancey, especially based on that other evidence we had from that cameo video, and then on top of that, Geordi being with them. Yeah, I'm thinking we get a big Q adventure, and Geordi is going to be in this season too. Like that sounds freaking amazing.
I don't know how you do a Picard series and don't have Q in it.
Oh, I don't either. I honestly am kind of shocked they didn't do it in the first season.
You don't want to blow your load.
Well, so here's what I think. I think it's weird that they didn't do it in the first season or the last, or save it for the last one. You know what I mean? Like,
you don't want to get greedy. Patrick Stewart's getting on out there.
Sure, but I just feel like the Q of it all. I would think, based on everything else, it would be like a good bookend, and maybe he'll appear in this season, and whatever he sets in motion will come to fruition next season. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much of a part of the series Q becomes.
I'm also curious, if like COVID has changed things, or to the point where like maybe Patrick Stewart is like, just one more season.
That's possible. That's absolutely possible. I would hate that because it sounds like they have 3 years worth of stories to tell. But yeah, that's a real bummer. Why'd you bring that up? That sucks.
Or maybe they looked at the first season and said, those episodes, we went a little slow.
Yeah. They're like, we have no ideas. All we ever do is Romulan cabals.
All right, let's talk about Space Seed. All right. So, we just missed the 54th anniversary of Space Seed coming out. It came out February 16th, 1967.
Wow. 54 years.
Yep. And that synopsis, the Enterprise discovers an ancient spacecraft carrying genetically enhanced supermen from the late 20th century Earth and their enigmatic, I can never say that word, warlord leader, Noonien Singh.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do.
Classic episode. Wonderfully done.
If you say so. Look, I'll be up front. This is not one of my favorite episodes.
Really?
It really isn't. It wasn't in my top 5. The listeners outvoted me, honestly.
Man, I think this one is a great high concept Like if I would watch this movie if it was unrelated to Star Trek, like a movie about like finding supermen from another time in the distant future. Like it sounds great. So I like the high concept. I think a lot of what they do in this episode between Kirk and Khan, like outmaneuvering each other verbally, is just amazing. I love it. I love the whole thing. There's so many classic lines in this episode as well.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of good stuff. There's some bad stuff, but there's
there's absolutely some bad stuff.
I really like a lot of the quotes. I really love Kirk and his ability to, like, as Khan points out, like, you're a brilliant tactician, Captain. You have your first officer question me, and you sit back and look for weaknesses.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It's a great line. Well, and that's the beginning of their sort of dance. Actually, I take that back. The real beginning of their dance mentally is when he is lying in the bed, and he starts to question him, like, who are you? Where did you come from? And he's like, oh, I think I am tired, Captain. And he's like, my questions will only take a moment. And he's like, I am very tired. And it's just like him it's Khan using the sort of grace of the medical profession against them to get more time. And he says, oh, can I study your technical manuals? So basically in that moment, Khan immediately, he's like, I'm in this time. I don't have information. Like I'm at a loss. It's just so beautifully written because it all feels very exposition-y, but it's so not exposition-y. When he says, "Where am I? Where am I?" and he says, "You're in sector da 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 da, just about to go into the space dock." Blah blah blah. He like names it or whatever.
Right.
Does that mean anything to you? And Khan says, I'm getting very tired. It's just so good.
Yeah. I feel like there was stuff to unpack that they didn't unpack. It was one of those issues where, at times it feels sexist.
For sure.
Because we have Marla McGivers, who is the historian. And I think it's funny that, Kirk is like, give that historian something to do. It's like, I don't know. Is she just an Earth historian? Like, what is, like, I know that I appreciate the idea that she's like obsessed with these bold, colorful men from Earth's past. And that's why she's like so drawn to Khan. But I kind of wish they had gone the way of actually, because McCoy mentions how he's got a certain magnetism about him. I kind of wish it was more of and I know I'll get shot for saying this.
Oh no.
Kind of wish it was more of a Cybox situation. I kind of wish he had turned some of the crew members, like more of the crew members against Kirk.
Well, and there is a beautiful moment where they're all sitting around discussing how much they admire him.
Yeah. Agreed.
I love that scene.
It's a good scene.
We talked a lot about it last week when we talked about Amok Time, the idea that the Vulcans sort of refuse to know themselves. They kind of like bury deeply their shame, and that's sort of the weakness of the Vulcans as a like culture. A lot of what their problems end up being, a lot of times it's because they're not acknowledging who they are. And especially around sexuality and Ponfar, but like in a lot of ways, they don't acknowledge their pride. And I mean, they're literally just like they're repressing their emotions. That's the whole species.
Yeah. It's a drastic overreaction to how horrible their race was initially.
Right. And it's both interesting because they've been able to conquer war amongst themselves, but also you see this sort of thing that they don't acknowledge who they are. And I really liked the scene comparing Amok Time to this episode when the three humans are talking about how much they admire this man, and Spock is getting incredibly uncomfortable. He's like, gentlemen. And then they're like, Spock, we can admire him and still stand against him, like still not be for him, still be appalled by him, but still admire aspects of him. And he's like very illogical. It's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's the strength of the human character, and the character of Kirk especially, is that like he acknowledges the flaws in his own makeup and sort of steers into them while avoiding the pitfalls of them. And I really like, I love that too. It's a really great moment. Yeah.
And, you know, look, just because it's not one of my favorites, it's because of little things like, and look, I had a roommate in college. I would watch him do stuff like this with women. Like they were drawn to, I never got it. I never understood.
Right. Negging.
But he,
Negging, where you treat a woman poorly so that she'll want you more. It's like a thing.
Right. Okay.
So, you haven't read The Game, Dave?
No,
I haven't either, but I've heard of it all my life. Like there's a really awful book. Apparently, I've never read it, called The Game, and it's like a guy wrote a book about how to get women to like you, and it's basically just treat them like shit and they'll like you more.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it happen. I've seen it work.
I have too, and it's a real bummer. And
it is.
And it's not like it just works on women; it works on everyone, because we all seek validation, and so sometimes when someone doesn't treat us well, we seek their validation more, and it's broken.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, I've seen it happen, and you know, Khan is a master manipulator. And I love that even though he's a master manipulator, Kirk still got the best of him and made him scream, "We offer the world order!" Like, your true face has appeared.
Yeah, it's just such a great scene because as you mentioned the moment where he says, "You're a brilliant tactician. You let your first officer attack while you lay back and play peaceful or whatever."
We'll look for weaknesses.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He's looking for weaknesses, and it's in pride that he finds that weakness. And he says, "Did you leave because you were scared?" He's like, I'm not scared of anything. Like he gets that. He uses his pride against him in a real like verbal jujitsu move to flip him and win the day and get him to reveal himself as a sympathizer. At first, just a sympathizer, and then later, of course, we find out he was one of them. He's like, "We would have ruled them," or whatever. We
offer the world order. Yeah,
it's great. It's great.
And I love so much. I love McCoy in this. You know, McCoy often comes off as a coward.
I can see that.
Something will happen, and he'll want to leave the bridge, or he's just like, he's freaking out, about some transporter or something, and he does in this episode too. But Khan's got a freaking scalpel to McCoy's throat, and McCoy goes, "Well, either choke me or cut my throat. Make up your mind." And then goes so far as to tell him how to do it to be most efficient.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it's a great moment. It's real stone cold from McCoy, but it also, that moment gave me the same feeling that those three humans sitting around the table have, where they're like admiring Khan. When Khan takes the scalpel away from his neck and says, "I like a brave man." It's like he like respects McCoy because of how steely and reserved he was and brave he was. Like that makes me like Khan, even though I know he wants to be a dictator and rule over people. I like him there.
Yeah, and the show is very effective in, even though I'm watching, they gave me a villain that while I am sitting there going, "Oh, this is awful," I'm also going, "Damn, he's charismatic."
Yeah.
Like, he's so good. Like this, the ominous feeling that I get when he's talking about like the vast technological advancements, but how little man himself has changed.
Has improved, yeah.
Yes. "I think we shall do well here, Captain." Like,
Yeah, and that "I think we will do well here" is like the turning point where you realize, oh, he is ready to, and then he tells his men later, like, we're no longer trying to take over the world. We're here to take over the universe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
I dig all that.
I dig all that too. And like, Khan uses everything that at his disposal, like, and he's just he is a very clever tactician. And talking about McGivers, is it McGivers or MacGyvers?
I don't remember. I always mix them up myself.
I want to say it's MacGyvers, and I think somebody says they say it two different ways in the episode, but one of them's wrong, and that's the point. One of the things that does make this whole thing believable, her switching sides.
Kirk gets it wrong consistently.
Yes, Kirk is constantly getting her name wrong. He says the thing about like maybe we'll finally get to have some use for this historian. He treats her like a throwaway person.
And when they're like announcing people to go on the away mission, she's like getting ready to paint. Like she has no thought that she's going to actually be called to do this.
Yeah.
She's never been used before.
Yeah. And I love it as soon as she goes in to meet Khan as the historian to try to interview him or whatever for professional purposes. And he immediately says, Ms. MacGyvers or whatever. I think it is McGivers. I don't remember.
I think it is McGivers.
Is it, Ms. McGivers, or like, he says her full name and he brings her in. The sword. You are part of my resurrection. Like he knows immediately who she is and immediately how to manipulate her. Starts and then of course plays with the idea that she has this respect for these men of ancient times, and he masterfully manipulates her. I do think there's some sexism with that character because I think that they make her a very weak-willed character. But part of that, and this is something you were mentioning earlier, about how this episode leaves things on the table unexplored.
Yeah. These
really well thought out, high concept episodes always feel too short.
They always feel too short. And I don't know if I specifically feel like her being weak and going over to Khan is necessarily sexism, because there's an episode later on. It's one of my least favorite episodes, so it's probably going to wind up on the worst list. But like where Kirk just falls for this robot woman, like in like 20 minutes, and he is so beside himself, Spock has to like erase his memory.
Oh gosh, that sounds amazing.
And it's so bad, but these things are just so like so 60s, like it just happens. So like, and there are a lot of episodes where an attractive alien lady is on board, and like one of these young bucks, one of these young lieutenants or ensigns just falls head over heels and just acts like a doof. And it's just like everyone is just so ridiculous who's not in charge on the bridge.
I am having some of why I point at it and immediately see sexism in it is because I've watched 2 episodes of this show this year. Actually, three episodes of this show this year. And one of them was the one with Zephram Cochrane where they start out the show by talking about the nag in the back of the ship. And it's just like awful. They just treat her like absolute shit. And then the end of the episode, they resolve the episode by being like, we'll just give the alien this lady's body. She's not an important character. It's really, really shitty the way they treat her character. And then in Amok Time, as you discussed, like you have this duplicitous woman, and then you have the prideful sort of older Vulcan lady, and both of them are sort of antagonistic and like not really characters to be respected. And then in this episode, so it's like my 3rd episode in a row of these sorts of like tropes. You've got McGivers, who is very weak-willed seeming and jumps from side to side. And then you have Uhura being treated very poorly for doing her job. Like she's just doing her job. She's reading the Morse code.
Right.
And Kirk goes, we hear it. Like she's that's her job. She's the linguist.
I'll tell you this. I don't think that's sexism, and here's why. Kirk is just a dick. Now, I don't know if it's really Kirk.
Right.
Or if it's Shatner, because subsequently we've learned over the course of several years that one of the things William Shatner used to do was he would get furious if the script had the other crew members telling him things. And he was like, well, I'm the captain. Shouldn't I know that? And he would pitch a fit. And really the only person who like ever really fought back was Nimoy.
Sure.
And they let Nimoy get away with it because Nimoy was the most popular character on the show.
Right. But also, you get these things, the way he is dismissive of her. And okay, let me just say this. You've seen all of this stuff way more than I have. I am literally talking about the 3 episodes I've seen in a row are building a very specific case. So far, every woman that I've seen on this show in this year, which, I've seen it all my life, but like I'm trying to look at it with new eyes for the podcast. Right. And like the 3 episodes we've seen, I'm like, wow, there have not been one quality female character, which I don't expect there to be. Like most of the quality characters on the show are McCoy, Spock, and Kirk. Like, there's very rarely another character. So, like, is that sexism, or is it just because the 3 main characters happen to be men? That's probably some sexism, just even the fact that that's the choice they made,
Right.
But that's not anything here. I don't think it's horrible. I just think there's something going on there.
Well, I think there are several things going on. Like the Uhura thing, it's hard to tell whether it was Shatner like ad-libbing something.
Sure.
Or if it was because that apparently did happen.
Right, but even if it is Shatner ad-libbing something, the way that he treats her with such disdain, I don't know that, and maybe you could have done that to a male crewman and it would have been just as accepted, but it felt very like of the 60s of the like quiet down, woman. Like that's how it feels.
Yeah, and I understand like that does seem like that in a vacuum. But, when you look at the series overall, I mean, yes, probably still a little sexist in some ways, but also Kirk is just a dick like that to everybody.
Right.
Like to the point where like McCoy will take him aside and be like, dude, come on, man. Right. Give Bailey a shot. He reminds me of you when you were his age. Like Kirk is such a, like, especially in the first episodes, in the first season, they wrote Kirk as such a, like, stalwart, narrowly focused individual. Like all of the awards, all of the valor medals and shit that he wins, that they have him, that they list off in court martial, for instance, to showcase his character. And it's just like, he is a genius and he's an overachiever. Like he is very, very serious. And, when you look at stuff like J.J. Abrams movies, which I love, but when you look at that, you go, he's kind of a doof. He kind of, kind of says, screw it. I'm going to go run after this woman, which he was a ladies' man, but Roddenberry made Kirk the ultimate Mary Sue. He was good at everything.
Right. And it sounds like some combination of Roddenberry and also Shatner himself not allowing himself to have flaws. And that's an issue. That's an issue for a lot of shows where judging this show by today's standards, it's just such a weird balance when you're looking at Star Trek, the original series, because it is a show that is clearly being written and planned, and like the concepts are coming from sci-fi writers that are really interested in doing really interesting things about human nature and like ethics and all this stuff. But then it's also just a cowboy show where they shoot aliens with phasers, and you have the brash cowboy captain. Like it's a weird synthesis of both of those things, and it makes it beautiful and it makes it accessible to a lot of people. But also it does make it weird sometimes.
Yeah. And it's one of those weird, like, I wish we could see into an alternate reality where we could look and see like what would have happened if the cage had been picked up immediately and they hadn't been told to make changes, because you had things like there were way more women on the bridge. Like the first officer was a woman,
Exactly. I was about to say that.
They were all wearing pants.
Oh yeah. Were they in the cage?
In the cage, they were wearing pants. Like they were showing literally less skin than the men were. And like they had really big, like turtleneck things going on, like scarf necks. And it just kind of like, I don't know if it was And even in Where No Man Has Gone Before, the second pilot, they weren't wearing skirts. It was as they fleshed it out, and studio people got in charge, and they listened to test audiences who said, well, who does the women didn't like number one. Roddenberry was floored by that. And I'll tell you, Roddenberry was a really shady character a lot of the time and did some really shitty things. But, the guy was really he thought women would love number one. And overall, the reaction was, who does she think she is?
Right. And
the network said, okay, you've either got to get rid of Satan, which was Spock, or you've got to get rid of the woman.
Right. And the thing is, like, when I say there's sexism in the show, I'm not blaming it on the show by itself. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. No. Like, all of this stuff compounds from the culture, to the like I mentioned, like it could be on-set things that I want to just call him Kirk, on-set things that Shatner decided to do that weren't called out in the moment because it's just not a time where they're going to call out sexism on the set, maybe whereas maybe the writer wouldn't have written it that way, but then the lead actor wants to say it that way, and everyone's like, yeah, that seems fine,
right?
And it's just, and then you go all the way to test audiences, like pushing for things to be less egalitarian. It's of its time, and
it is.
People talk about like cancel culture and stuff, and like people talk about like where should we stop canceling things? Like, should we cancel George Washington because he owned slaves? Like, that's like a big thing that the right wing in media these days, like the right wing media tries to like say that that's this ridiculous far flung thing that the liberals want to do, right?
I just totally had like a Family Guy bit in my head where George Washington is furiously deleting tweets.
Oh, it's good. Well, the thing is, like, yeah, it sounds like George Washington was a shitty slave owner, but he also fought really hard to like create democracy in the modern era. So like, things can be two things. Like, you can have a show like Star Trek that is a trailblazer for feminism in many ways by even just having Uhura on the bridge, by having complex characters like Edith Keeler. But you can also be a show that just like puts a lot of eye candy on the screen and devalues women or only values them for their bodies at times. And like, it can be both of those things. It can be a trailblazer and a thing that pushed forward the conversation about feminism. And it can also be a thing that is of its time and like hard to look at through a modern lens and not see it.
And it's so interesting too, because, through our lens, looking at the original series, we see the women in the short skirts and we think, well, that's sexist. But, then you hear the women who were on the show and they mostly talk about how they liked those short skirts and they thought they were sexy and they felt good in them. And then you remember, oh yeah, this kind of helped start the sexual revolution in a lot of ways.
Sure. Yeah.
That sort of thing was unheard of.
That's a whole different, really, when I talk about like the eye candy and the whatever, that's a whole really different discussion, because then you have like second wave versus third wave feminism and all of that, which like, yes, women can be empowered in their mini skirts, and that's wonderful. But it is not, I don't think oftentimes on this show, like, especially when they have like aliens in the background or female characters walking through, a lot of times they are just there for that purpose. It's one thing when like a character is fleshed out and has an inner life and they are just in a mini skirt. It's another thing when that's all that they are, because I do think that is pushing back whatever. Yeah,
Star Trek is very cheesecake beefcake. I mean, Shatner loses his shirt all the time.
Sure.
Like, it is very sexually charged.
Sure, but that's the thing. That's the sexist part, though. He is a main character that has like, he's a main character with an inner life and complex emotions that gets to be sexy.
Yep.
And most of the women that are sexual objects on the show, it's kind of that Madonna whore complex of like, most of the women who have complex inner lives, they wear button-up coats. But then a bunch of women walk around in the background, they're all wearing miniskirts, you know?
Well, you know, maybe we would have been able to keep Rand. She was supposed to stick around, but, you know, she wouldn't sleep with Roddenberry, so he fired her.
It's just so complicated because it's like the guy who's pushing for the more women on the bridge, like more is also the guy who's firing everyone for being for not sleeping with him. Like, what the hell, you know? Like,
yep.
It's just complicated. The past is a complicated time, and today's a complicated time. I'm sure we'll look back at today, and certain things will seem barbaric that at the time seemed fine to us. It's a good thing we're recording hours of podcasts every week.
Yeah. Talking about how things have changed, you know, I saw someone that I'm friends with on Twitter. She said there needs to be a dating app for nerds. And I quote tweeted her, and I was like, you know, back in my day, they were called dating sites, and the only people who used them were nerds.
Yep.
Like, I went and got in a relationship for 12 years and turned around and everything's different. God, I don't ever want to get back out there. It's terrible.
It's rough out there.
Like the jocks took over the dating apps. That was our one thing.
That was our one thing.
We knew how to use the computer.
That was our one shot at love. Was they didn't know how to use the computer.
They had to figure out how to press the button to get the treat to come out.
Okay, so overall, though, great episode. I really love. We mentioned this line earlier, but I really love the line: "We humans have a streak of barbarism in us, appalling, but there nonetheless."
Mm-hmm. And as we find later on, the Vulcans really do.
Yeah, but Vulcans do too, and they just refuse to acknowledge it, which leads to things like Ponfar and repression. I don't know.
Right.
It just.
And I dig that.
Yeah, and I dig that.
I do. I like that. I like that. There's a price they pay for the, you know, their emotional composure.
Me too. I think it's very interesting and makes for some interesting things to talk about. I don't know. And I also really, really love the line when they're talking about, Kirk says, you keep talking in phrases of war, but this is a social occasion. And Khan says, it is often said that social occasions are war concealed.
Mm-hmm.
Just that's a point of view right there, man.
Yeah, I dig it, you know, but I think it would be one of my favorites. Except for, you know, one, I just don't like seeing women getting pushed around. And two, all the funky hand stuff. Like every time Khan gets out of a chair, he's like putting his hands together and breathing heavily and doing like weird hand gestures. And then all of his followers are doing it.
Yeah, well, I think it's supposed to be like them. I don't know. They said he was Sikh. And I think it's supposed to be their interpretation of like Sikh culture and him like focusing himself. I know nothing about Sikh culture.
I don't either.
But or if that is a accurate or inaccurate representation, I assume inaccurate.
I mean, if you go by today's standards, Sikh are supposed to have beards,
right? And I think they were saying he was of Sikh like descent, I guess. Which Ricardo Montalban's like
Cuban.
Yeah, like not Sikh at all.
You're a dark guy.
Exactly.
Come on over.
There's a whole nother thing to talk about there.
There's something.
Oh yeah. That's definitely there. That
we can
sort
just
of
skip that
racism that's there. You know, so or just like putting all the races together. Just like that's brown. He's brownish. He can play any of them.
They didn't have to make him Sikh. Why couldn't they have just made him I just don't understand.
No, I think they just wrote the character that way. They wrote the name, and the thing you're saying you don't like, the thing about using the hand symbols. That's probably something they had written in the script, and they were just like, oh yeah, well, we can't, we keep him a Sikh, and no one will notice. Well, it's the 60s.
Well, it's true. No one noticed for a long time.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
I mean, maybe that's the thing that people do, or that was pulled from something. I just think it looks silly. It looked silly. It just did.
Right. Doesn't bother me, but I don't know. I have no idea what they're going for, or what it is actually in their, if there is anything it's culturally based on. I don't know. Anyway, so that's Space Seed, right? You got any quotes or trivia?
I love when Spock says, "Would you reveal to war-weary populations that some 80 Napoleons might still be alive?"
Yeah, it's a great line.
And I love that the show, they gave, without ever knowing that they gave future Star Trek shows a lot of wiggle room. Like there are a lot of Trekkies out there that use the statements in this episode as like, scripture, and they're angry with Enterprise for establishing that, World War III was not the eugenics wars, because they said it was in this episode, but they also said that a lot of the records are lost from this time. And my guess is a lot of the records would be lost from the actual Third World War, which happened right before First Contact.
Right. For sure.
So, yeah, I don't have a problem with the change, with the retcon. Retcon.
It is weird in this episode when they're talking about the time, and they start talking about like in 2018 when when these men had taken over all of the population of the Earth. It's like, okay, I guess we are officially not in this original Star Trek timeline. Like that is for sure.
Well, in the Voyager, they went back to 1996 and nothing was going on like that. But in the background, there was like a schematic of like the Botany Bay or something.
Yeah. And I know there was a whole book about the eugenics war that like tries to make it make sense. Like it all like the eugenics war was a secret war.
Oh no, they didn't try. Greg Cox is a master.
Well, I love it. I love it. I love making that work. That's super fun.
It's a trilogy, though. I mean, Greg Cox is amazing. He's the guy that wrote the Q Continuum books. That trilogy. Yeah, he's really good. And, a straight gentleman, I'll say. I'm friends with him on Facebook. He's awesome.
Oh,
I like
that's
Greg
great.
Cox.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have no doubt those are great books.
Anyway. I appreciate that kind of guy who just wants to make it all make sense.
Believe me, I do too. I am that guy. I cannot help but try to headcanon everything to make it make sense. Mm-hmm. That is like one of my main traits and one of my main like functions on podcasts is like people are like, Matt, headcanon that. I'm like, sure. And I joke, but I didn't realize this until maybe this last year or whatever, but I think my headcanoning skills, I guess, or like the reason I do it is because of religion.
Oh gosh.
It is. I grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian environment, and like I would very much like, well, the Bible says this and that, but I can make it work. Like, these two conflicting things are said, but I can make that work. And like, that was important to me to have that internal consistency. And I'm not sure where that that drive for internal consistency comes from. If it like comes from religion and like, but something inherent in me, I think like seeks for that internal consistency. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it went in reverse for me. I think Star Trek made me do it first, and then as I got older and I started looking at the Bible, I was like, I think I can make this work. Because I used to drive my family nuts. I would have to like talk to our pastor every week or something and be like, I need to go over some scriptures with him because I'm just not understanding this here and this there. And they would get aggravated, like, we want to go eat lunch.
Yeah. Yep. so funny. Like that's the thing. Like I think me and you were both those kids. Like we really wanted it all to make sense. Yep. And it all to be internally consistent. And so when it wasn't, we wanted to solve it and figure it out. And like, it's I have the same experience, and my other people I know have the same experience where like your parents are like, no, like you don't have to take it that seriously. Like, no, you definitely need to believe it or you're going to hell, but don't take it so seriously.
Yeah. Like, don't bother the pastor with it. He wants to go have lunch too.
His lunch is more important than your soul.
Yeah.
I mean, you laugh, but I'm laughing because it is a deep truth that we both experienced. I'm not laughing. Not laughing at us. I'm laughing at the idea that that's how we were treated. It's just a weird way to raise a child, to be like, this is the most important thing, but also don't go too deep on it. You don't want to be a weirdo.
Right. All right. So before we get to trivia, I do want to ask you, what do you think of Kirk's ultimate solution to drop Khan onto SETI Alpha 5?
Well, it is begging for a sequel. I will say that.
It was, I don't know, man. I think it's such a bad idea. I just do.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it makes sense that Harv Bennett would go and look through all this stuff and go, oh, well, clearly I want to do this. Like, I want to see what seed sprung for or what crop sprung from the seed Kirk planted that day.
Yeah.
As Spock said. But yeah, I don't.
It's a bad idea. There's really no good reason to do the solution. And I think they fully. Well, see, that's the thing. They don't fully explore that in Wrath of Khan either. Like, it's never said that he did a dumb thing. The bad thing that he did in Wrath of Khan, the thing he's like serving penance for, is the fact that he never checked on them.
Yeah, and why would he? The whole point was that they were going to have to make it on their own.
Yeah.
Like, it was either, hey, you guys get the chance to live here and you might die.
Or you can be prisoners.
Or you can be in prison. And Khan chose what he wanted. You know, he started spouting Milton.
Yeah, I love the subtlety of that. Have you read Milton? Have you read Milton, Captain? And then
yes, I think I understand.
I think I understand. And then that's a really great moment, just because Khan doesn't say the line. He like leaves the room, and then Kirk has to inform his crew. I like that moment a lot. Yeah, it's a beautiful ending in a way, but it's like really not. It doesn't make any sense. This guy just tried to take over the universe, starting with your ship. Mm-hmm. He was on a prison colony before he was, and they even say, what do they say? Some sort of it would be a shame to put them into reprogramming camps or something like that, which, like, what is that about?
Yeah. Like, I want to know what that is.
That's a dark thing that they throw in there for a second.
Yeah. Hey, Trekkies, are you guys sure that Star Trek is a utopia in the future?
Yeah.
Because that sounded like some Clockwork Orange shit.
It definitely did. Oh, man.
Yeah, I think it was a bad call on Kirk's part. I get it. He was just like, well, that's the way he was made. We can't hold him, It's so funny, too, because, very recently, Bill Shatner has been, on Twitter screaming about how you can't judge old things by today's standards. And it's exactly the same stance Kirk takes here. Yeah, you can't judge Khan by today's standards. I mean, he's a relic. So let's just put him on an old planet that, it's kind of rough and tumble like him, a little rough around the edges. See if you can whip it into shape there. And
that's really funny. Well, that's the thing, is like you are planting a space seed that is definitely going to come back to haunt somebody. Maybe not you, maybe not you. It didn't have to be him, but like you're basically setting a bomb for someone else to find.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's bad. That's not good. Bad Kirk.
I really wanted to do, years ago, I was writing a script called Mr. Singh's Neighborhood. And it was basically like a children's program on SETI Alpha 5.
That's great.
Where he's like, yes, instead of saying you're superior, he's like, yes, you are superior. You are superior. I never had the money to put it all together. Anyway.
By the way, the Khan voice, it's real fun to do.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
It's not that hard. Like, just it's easy to fall into. Yes, I am Ricardo Montalban. It's a lot of fun, man. I've been enjoying every time I get to quote him on this episode.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to do. Yeah. All right, let's see. Trivia. Let's see. Spacey writer Carrie Wilbur used the 18th century British custom of shipping out the undesirables as a parallel for his concept of seed ships used to take unwanted criminals out to space from the overpopulated Earth, hence the name Botany Bay. In his original treatment, the Botany Bay left Earth in 2096 with 100 criminals, both men and women, and a team of a few volunteer lawmen. I think that would have been interesting. Push it along, get it out of our neck of the woods, timeline-wise. Also in Wilbur's original treatment, the Khan character was a Nordic Superman named Harold Eriksson. This evolved in the first draft, where the character first introduced himself as John Eriksson, but was later revealed to be Ragnar Thorwald, who had been involved in the First World Tyranny.
That's wonderful. Ragnar Thorwald.
Thorwald was more brutal in this version of the story, where he dispatched the guard outside of his quarters with a phaser. Roddenberry questioned Wilbur's notion of wasting a high-tech spaceship and expensive resources on criminals, just as Kirk and Spock posed the same question in the episode itself, and came up with the concept of a bunch of space Napoleons. The Botany Bay model was designed by Matt Jeffries before he came up with the Enterprise. He described it as an antique space freighter and put it aside for a chance to use it in the show. This episode contains several references to future Earth history that created issues where real life caught up with the mid-1990s time frame. Specifically, Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek First Contact, the latter of which was coincidentally released in 96. The supposed year of the Botany Bay's launch established that the Third World War actually occurred in the first half of the 21st century, and the eugenics wars of the 1990s were a different conflict. I guess this is just a little bit of interest. I thought it was funny. Khan goes through a record 5 changes of costume for a male cast member of the original series.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I noted that they really are trying to make Khan a thing in this episode. Like, they're really playing him up as a villain. Like, him draped in that weird sheet at the beginning is like very interesting, and like, he's very like sort of sexualized and like, just you want to be him, and all the ladies want to be with him.
That's right, man, and that's who Ricardo Montalban was at the time. Like, he was a sex symbol at the time. Like, okay, he would show up on shit, and you could hear the women swooning. I'm told, like, from across the nation, throughout the neighborhoods, you could hear it. Oh,
how was it?
No.
Oh, I see now.
These thirsty housewives just falling over. I guess I don't know. That's like these I don't know, man. But he was in a bunch of stuff at the time. He was a big deal. He was one of those, just, oh God, he's just to die for. Like, just sex and personified.
That's the thing, though. I'm not gonna lie. It still works. It was working for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I might have betrayed Kirk.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. I don't really have any homosexual leanings, but like, he's an attractive man in those scenes. It's just truth, you know?
He is. He does have a magnetism, as McCoy put it.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I mean, I have
At
no
this
leanings.
point, are we just a con thirst cast?
That's okay.
I'm fine with it. Let's change our name.
Okay, I forgot. I got to bring up two things. One, I hate Uhura's acting in this episode. Like,
she's only for that second, right?
Huh?
I feel. Oh no, she is in it later too. Never mind.
Yeah, it's not for the second where she's saying the Morse code,
right? Because
that's just totally a thing that happens with people who aren't captains or commanders,
right?
Kirk is just a dick. And then she was fine in that scene, but specifically when I was fine with her not giving or doing what she needed to do or what Khan wanted her to do. And then like old dude's about to hit her again. And Khan's like, no, or whatever. It's fine. He's dead anyway. And then she just like does this dramatic head drop. Like, and it was real bad. And the climax of the thing, I get it. They tried to do a good, wide shot so we couldn't tell that they were stunt actors, but it didn't work.
Oh, no. That's something I noticed about this episode and also very much so last week with A Muck Time, and I don't think I brought it up. The stunt acting is ridiculous. Yeah. And part of that is our TVs today are so much higher resolution than they were having to deal with then. If you watch this on a tube TV, I'm sure you couldn't tell.
Absolutely.
On the average tube TV of the time.
Yeah.
But man, with our high def stuff, like these guys look so like not like Kirk at all. So funny.
I don't put that on them, but what I do put on them is like, Kirk hits him with a pipe and that's what fails him. That's what they've been beating the shit out of each other for 20 minutes here. And then Kirk just hits him like lightly on the back with a pipe and brings him down.
I would not go lightly. I would say it's this. This is what defeats Khan. And like, I kind of wish they'd set it up or something because like they could have set that up earlier in the episode and been like, crewman, this lever is loose. Make sure you fix that or something. Like it could have been like, and I think that's what they were going for is that in that moment, like Khan says something in that moment. He's like, I'm superior to you in every way or something like that. Like, you cannot defeat me. I'm superior to you. And then Kirk he basically has to fight dirty to win, which I liked. I liked that Kirk was willing to fight dirty to win. And also that he knows his own ship well enough that he can grab a weapon from somewhere that Khan might not know. Like Khan doesn't know that he can grab under the shelf and unscrew that thing and suddenly he has a pipe in his hand. So he's able to surprise him. I liked that. I think there could have been a more clever way of outsmarting Khan in this episode.
I agree.
But I didn't hate it, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't completely buy it. But I will say this to sort of, offset the negativity. That shot where he like comes out and just like, he comes out of his quarters and just like punches that red shirt and that dude just flies up into the air and does like a backflip midair and lands looked so good. Like, damn, Khan is strong. Just like, that dude just flew, buddy. It didn't look like he was on wires. It looked really good. And I'm always shocked by that shot for the time frame.
Yeah. I think mostly the fight scene works pretty well. Definitely better than some others in this series.
Oh man, we haven't even gotten to any of the stuff where like, dude, there's like a big fight sequence where like it's totally a wide angle, like bird's eye view wide angle, and Kirk is literally just like dropping onto the ground and like side rolling underneath people's feet.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it's real bad. There's some really bad stuff. But this episode's not one of them. This episode, mostly, the quality's really high on most everything in this episode.
Yeah, it's just not one of my favorites. It's fine. It's a middle. It's a upper middle for me. Like, one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. All right. Well, any other trivia before we let the people go?
That's it, man. That's all I got.
Well, dude, thanks for doing this podcast with me.
Thanks for doing it with me.
Always very pleasant to get together with you and just get to hang out for a little while. I mean, not always, but
yeah, I didn't think so.
All right, guys.
I'm not overly amiable.
Me neither. I'm definitely not overly amiable. I try to be, but like I also can't let things go sometimes. Like I really I will argue a point past the point of where it's reasonable to argue a point. And so I am definitely not like when an amiable person would be like, "Hey man, cool, good on you, that's cool." Like I'm like, no, you must understand. At moment 16, he says this. Yeah.
I gotta admit, I enjoy being the bee in the bonnet from time to time.
You can luxuriate in a nice jail cell, but if your hand touches metal, I swear by my pretty floral bonnet, I will end you.
It's not time. Not enough time has passed for us to happily, publicly quote Firefly.
Oh, plenty of I will never stop happily.
Whedon has been canceled. We must.
Nope. Whedon can be canceled. I am not going to ever stop liking Firefly. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess no one should expect me to either, for real, or Buffy or Angel. I don't know,
Yeah.
Look, I'm sitting here doing a Star Trek podcast. We talked about how Gene Roddenberry is.
Yeah.
Or was.
Absolutely. People are people. People are complicated. The past is particularly complicated, as we discussed earlier. And sometimes people are people. They can make great art and be real shitbags. And sometimes they can make just bad mistakes of youth and arrogance and stuff, and sometimes they are actual predators, and like sometimes you got to find that line to where you're willing to continue to support their content. But I'm never going to stop liking Firefly or Buffy, although I just want to bring up Buffy, also horrible fight choreography scenes. Like, oh man, those are some classics. Like because Sarah Michelle Gellar's so small, and the stunt lady or man, I'm not sure in the first season. I think in the first season it might be a man, because it is so ridiculous when they cut away. They cut to the wide shots to see a person fighting the vampires, and it's just a huge dude in her outfit, I think. And it's
I didn't think it was.
I don't know. It may or may not be. I'm not sure.
I know the guy that played Spike just did not look anything like Spike. The guy that he was like Ron Perlman. Like he didn't look anything like Spike.
Well, Buffy's the one that always stood out to me in this, especially in this first season or two. I think they get a better Buffy lookalike as the show goes on, but I think like early on in the series they couldn't afford like a petite stunt performer, and they just got this like very buff stunt performer who would like step in, and I just looked so bad. It looked so bad.
Yeah, aside from the pilot, I don't think I've watched the first season except for the first time through.
Yeah.
I don't like it very much.
I'd really like to go back and revisit, but it's hard to keep up with what the content's coming out now. I know. So just like, especially doing podcasts about all the stuff, like right now with Marvel doing their we're trying to do a lot with the MCU cast right now. We're doing 2 episodes a week, and we're doing live watches, and we're doing all this stuff. And it's just like that 30 or 40 minutes of content is turning into like a 16-hour week for me. So it's like they put out a 30-minute WandaVision, and I end up like recording and editing for 16 hours. It's just a little ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
But I'm enjoying it immensely. I really love it.
Good for you, man.
I do. Anyway, so I guess that's it, right?
All right, man.
All right. Yeah. Jolan True.
Live long and prosper.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.